This week on Pop of Culture, constructive conversations about Reconstruction.
The 15th Amendment, I've actually thrown out this phrase voting rights, but basically we don't have a right to vote.
And public art.
All of the art that will be included is site-specific and responsive to the community and the site.
That and more coming up.
Support for Pop of Culture comes from you. You've probably heard that Congress has defunded public media. For Ball State Public Media, that's 40% of our funding, about $1.4 million. So if you value this program, created by and focused on folks in your community, then now's the time to step up. This show will not exist without you. Become a monthly donor now at indianapublicradio.org.
From IPR, this is Pop of Culture. I'm Kara DuQuette.
And I'm Jen Blackmer. Coming up, we'll learn about the $500,000 Public Art Initiative and local arts awards when we sit down with members of the MuncieArts and Culture Council.
Right now, we're going to lean into the culture side of arts and culture.
Today, we have a special guest in studio with us. Nicole Etcheson is a Civil War and Reconstruction era scholar, and she will be delving into the Reconstruction Amendments, better known as the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, at an event that will be held at Mering Hunt Library on Wednesday, September 17th at 6 p.m. Welcome, Nicole. We're happy to have you here on Pop of Culture.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
We're very excited to get into this. So first of all, tell me a little bit about yourself. I know you're a historian. You're here at Ball State. What is your work? What do you sort of delve into with your history?
Well, I've written a book on the settlement of the lower Ohio Valley, essentially Ohio, Indiana, and Illinois. I wrote a book on Bleeding Kansas, the Civil War in Kansas in the 1850s that preceded the Civil War. My last book was a micro history of the North in the Civil War, looking at Putnam County, Indiana, from 1850 to about 1880 to see how the Civil War impacted the Northern home front. And that actually has been turned into a documentary, which aired last February.
Oh, fantastic. Is that the first time you've had your work explored in that format?
Yes, and I was totally not expecting anything like that to happen.
Wow, what was it like?
It was, I felt a deep responsibility because I felt a deep responsibility when I was writing the book because I was writing about people, John and Elizabeth Applegate, Robert Townsend, people who had lived and died in Putnam County that no one is going to really talk about, ordinary people. And so I felt a lot of responsibility to get that right, because if you write about Abraham Lincoln and you get something wrong, there will be a million people who are going to jump on you and correct you and no, that's the wrong interpretation. But these seemed like ordinary Hoosiers who weren't going to have anybody else maybe ever tell their stories in any kind of format. And so when it went, I felt that with the book, and then when it went to the dramatization, then I felt not just that responsibility, but then I felt like I wanted this to be something that the people of Putnam County could be proud of. Because again, don't think there are very many Civil War historians who are going to dramatize Putnam County,
Indiana.
Sure,
yeah. And there's a responsibility, I think, that comes with that kind of storytelling as well, right? Because your audience is going to be broader and it's going to be really sort of immediately impactful, which is excellent. So.
Yes. And it's telling a story about Indiana, so you want to be fair, that you're representing all the different aspects of these stories.
Excellent. All right. Well, that actually leads us then into the meat of our conversation today, because the local chapter, the Paul Revere chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution, are promoting the upcoming Ken Burns documentary, and they're intersecting it with Constitution Week. And you will be delivering the keynote. I believe this is the second year they've done this. And you'll be delivering the keynote address on September 17th. And what will you be speaking about?
Well, I'm speaking about the Reconstruction era amendments, the 13th Amendment that emancipates enslaved people, the 14th Amendment, which is very long and complicated, but which we mostly know because it puts citizenship, a definition of citizenship in the Constitution, and the 15th Amendment, which is about voting rights.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and you will be speaking about this then in an event that's open to the public at Mering Hunt Library. We are, I have, if you follow the news, you have seen and read and heard a fair amount of invoking of what the 14th Amendment says, what the 13th Amendment seems fairly straightforward. It's the 14th Amendment, I think, that we have a lot of conversations about happening right now. Why is that the case?
Well, I would say actually all three amendments. Mm-hmm. The 14th Amendment debate is probably most prominent because people hear President Trump talking about taking Section 1 of the 14th Amendment, which defines what a citizen is. You're born here or you're naturalized. And there's a little clause in that Section 1 that says, subject to this jurisdiction thereof.
Okay.
And that's the clause that in the past has always just applied to a very small group. Essentially, if you are a diplomat from another country and you have a child born in the United States, that child is not subject to the jurisdiction of the United States. That child is subject to the jurisdiction of... So diplomats' children don't get birthright citizenship. But essentially, ever since 1868, when the 14th Amendment was added to the Constitution, Section 1 of the 14th Amendment has been interpreted to mean birthright citizenship. You're born here, you're a citizen. So if your parents are immigrants or illegal immigrants, if they have a child, that child is a citizen even if the parents are not. Mm-hmm. And that is what Mr. Trump is doing with Section 1. He's saying, well, they're not really subject to the jurisdiction of the United States, so they shouldn't automatically be citizens. He's reinterpreting away from birthright citizenship. Mm-hmm. So that's why everybody's talking about the 14th Amendment.
Right. So what will you be discussing primarily? So what is your thesis for the talk that you're going to give?
Well, I would like them to understand the continuing importance of these amendments. And I've talked about the 14th Amendment, but scholars of what's called the carceral state, the disproportionate imprisonment of people of color in our country, point to the 13th Amendment. And they say the 13th Amendment has enabled this or caused this. And the 15th Amendment, I've actually thrown out this phrase, voting rights, but basically we don't have a right to vote. The 14th Amendment does use the right to vote, but all the 15th Amendment or the 19th Amendment say is that you cannot prohibit people from voting because of their race, their color, their previous condition of servitude, or because they are female. Mm-hmm. There is no what we call affirmative grant of suffrage in the Constitution. It's a qualified grant. And in the post-civil rights era, we did amend the Constitution to make poll taxes and literacy tests inadmissible. So there are some things that were loopholes that don't exist anymore. But for example, voting IDs. Mm-hmm. States can require and do require, as Indiana does, voting IDs. Some people are concerned about the SAVE Act, where you're going to have to prove citizenship. Well, if you're a woman who married and changed her name, your birth certificate isn't going to be enough. You're going to have the proper paperwork. And there are arguments that we need to stop fraudulent voting. but how many legitimate voters get disfranchised by these methods. So all these 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments in so many ways are still in play today.
Absolutely. Yeah. So when you are teaching, when you're working with students, with undergrads in particular, and I know you teach undergrads and graduate students, yes, how do you encourage our younger generation to be curious about their history, particularly in this country?
I think they are curious. They are sometimes we do a good job, I think, in our educational system of imbuing people with reverence for the Constitution. We do not necessarily do a good job of informing them about what's actually in the Constitution. So people come out with ideas in their heads. After the last election, I had a student who was saying that it wasn't constitutional for the Republicans to control all three branches of government. It's like, no, there's nothing in the Constitution. In fact, it's happened many times in our history that one party. And someone else told me they were unhappy with the unconstitutional way that Kamala Harris received the Democratic Party nomination. And of course, the Constitution says nothing about political parties at all because the founders did not anticipate having them. So what those anecdotes tell me is that people are like, the Constitution says you can do it, it's right. If it's unconstitutional, it's wrong. But they haven't read the Constitution. They don't know that much about it.
Right. I was going to sum this up myself, but I think it's more important to get your take on it. But events such as Constitution Week coming up, where you're speaking, why is it important for folks in this area to perhaps attend or continually engage with our Constitution?
The founders believed in self-government. They believed that it was essential to the liberty of a free people that they should have the rule over themselves. But they also had their doubts about the virtue of people to rule themselves. And so that's why the Constitution has some arcane things like the Electoral College. And originally, senators were not directly elected by the people. They were selected by their state legislatures. The founders put in these kind of barriers because they had some worries. But ultimately, the responsibility on us throughout our history since 1776 and since 1787 and the formation of the government under which we still live is to be responsible citizens, to be informed about our system of government and how it works, how it is evolved, how it still impacts us today, and how we are shaping it and can shape it for future generations of Americans.
Well, that's excellent. And again, very important that we continue to think about our history in so many different contexts, especially with decisions that are being made today. Nicole Etcheson, we're very thrilled that you could come and spend some time with us as you're preparing for your event coming up on September 17th at Marion Hunt Library. Nicole Etcheson is the Alexander M. Bracken Distinguished Professor of History at Ball State University. Her book, A Generation at War, The Civil War Era in a Northern Community, 2011, won the 2012 Avery O. Craven Award from the Organization of American Historians for the most original book on the Civil War era. Nicole, thanks for your time today.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
The Muncie Mayor's Arts Awards are Friday, September 19th. They celebrate contributions to the cultural community by everyone from art professionals to volunteers. Concurrently, $500,000 has just been awarded for 4 public art installations in the city. The organization responsible for overseeing both of these projects is the MuncieArts Culture Council, and IPR's Stephanie Weekman sat down with 2 of the board members.
Tanya Seid is the executive director of the MuncieArts Culture Council. Carl Schaefer is a board member and co-owner of Gordy Fine Art and Framing Company. Welcome. So tell me, MuncieArts, I remember when it used to be referred to as MAC in the community when I first heard about it. How long have you been around?
We started in 2012 officially, but there were groups of people in the arts and culture community who were meeting for a few years prior to that. And so they're the ones that effectively birthed that. And I know Carl was involved in those early days on an official capacity and can probably talk about that a little bit more.
Well, yes, I was there at the very beginning, which originated with something called Community Conversations. And that was really the first time that arts and culture organizations all sat at the same table and met one another. So it was a really important group and decided to formalize a little bit later. And we formed a board. And I was fortunate to be the founding president of that board. So I have a very long history, sort of off and on with the group, and I'm very glad to be back.
And Tanya, I know that you are newer to MuncieArts as an organization.
Yes, I started back in February of this year as the executive director, and I'm not entirely new to the organization because I've volunteered on a few committees, including the previous Mayor's Arts Award Steering Committee, which is what Carl chairs now, and have certainly paid attention to the organization in the 20 years that I've lived here too.
I know MuncieArts does a lot of public programs and public art. So what programs have you done in the past that we would have seen around town or as citizens?
Great question. So, of course, many Mayor's Arts Awards every 2 years in the past. But more recently, it's been wonderful to see the public art come to fruition and the fondness that different people have for it, including Midnight Palace, which is in Dave's Alley, 3 Dots, and other murals that are along Walnut Street. And now we have more public art that's on the way that's funded by American Rescue Plan Act money that we'll be announcing soon.
Okay. So let's talk about the Mayor's Arts Awards. You said it's every 2 years. This year, it's the 10th year of the initiative. First of all, what does it say about a community that awards artistic content?
This is an extremely important program because by being the Mayor's Arts Awards, it equates the importance of arts and culture with the identity of the city. And that's something that has really been sort of built up over the 10 years that the program has existed. The first awards were done in 2015. And it was a really wonderful celebration over at Minnetrista with a tent and all sorts of things. Now it is much more of a performative kind of celebration. So in addition to the nominees, which come from the community, there are typically about 20 nominees in each year that we do it. It happens every other year. The celebration also highlights something about the arts community in our city. And so the last time we did it was in the Southside Middle School auditorium, and it celebrated arts in our schools. And this year, we are really celebrating the music scene, which is really prevalent and a little bit underground in our city. It doesn't get the exposure sometimes, although this program has really helped with that. So we're really glad to be able to highlight the music scene in about 5 performances during the celebration this year.
Okay. So the award ceremony is September 19th at 7 o'clock at Muncie Civic Theater. I was going to ask, why should the community come join? But it sounds like they should because of some great musical performances in addition to the awards presentations.
Absolutely right. It's a fun night. You had to see people in your community be recognized. And I can say as a former recipient of the Arts Educator Award, it means something a lot to those people and you want to celebrate with them. So, come together, celebrate the people in your community. It's a way of also understanding the depth and breadth of our arts and culture community and the impact that they're having in our community too.
In addition to the Mayor's Arts Awards, you recently announced, as you mentioned, funding for some public art projects with Federal American Rescue Plan dollars. Can you talk a little bit about the projects that were awarded and what we'll get to see in town when they're finished?
Absolutely. So in our community, there was $500,000 awarded for public art. This was a few years ago through a collaboration from the City of Muncie City Council, the Office of the Mayor. And so working closely with our city partners, Whiteley Community Council and the Whiteley neighborhood helped us identify 3 different sites in the Whiteley neighborhood, including at Schaefer Chapel, ArtRise, and the Bewley Center. And then at the corner of 8th and Hoyt, across from the Common Market and near Habitat for Humanity, is where the other site is going to be. So of the 4 artists that were selected with community input, 2 are from Indiana, and the other 2 are from further afield, including San Francisco and Minnesota. So that tells you that we have national level art. It was nationally competitive, and all of the art that will be included is site specific and responsive to the community and the site as well.
As an art lover, one of the things that I appreciate about the people that are receiving awards is some of the interactive art, where it looks pretty, but it's also for a purpose. You can interact with it. Can you talk about kind of that movement and bringing more pieces that are become part of the community?
I think what you've just pointed out there is really important. Often when public art is talked about, people think about them as bronze sculptures or bronze monuments, memorials to days of old. And this is very much about how do we engage community, how do we create conversations around art as well. And a wonderful example of that is what's going to be through Project One Studio at the corner where the Bewley Center is on Martin Luther King Boulevard. So it looks a little bit like a geodesic dome. It's multicolored, and it's going to include words and phrases of what people think of and what they're proud of about their community, the Whiteley community specifically. So Ken Hudson from the Whiteley Community Council was really helpful in facilitating conversations with the different summer camp and after-school programs that are in the neighborhood, so that as much youth input and adult input could be included. And so the designers are taking those words and phrases and including them in the little glass or metal kinds of inserts that are going into this big framework that essentially invites people into the dome. That is something that I think is really beautiful in terms of how it really becomes something else when people interact with it.
Here's a question that gets asked a lot on this show, directly or indirectly, and gets asked by a lot of arts organizations. Why should we fund art with public money? What does it bring to us?
What a great question, too. So the way I look at it is what makes us enjoy where we live. Imagine if you didn't go to the doctor, you didn't take your vitamins, how would you feel? Well, similarly, with no arts or culture in our community, how would we feel? I ran across a statistic recently that said 50% of people relocate to a new community based on the arts and culture available. So I wish I could say precisely what it is relative to our community, but I think that's a good stat that at least half the people care about what it is. And then the rest of the people, I think, are really glad that the other people care about it too, because they're paying attention and making sure that there's art hanging in the hospitals. There are places to be able to do youth theater. You can attend Broadway shows in your local auditorium on campus, for instance. Hear great documentaries or see great documentaries on public television, and go to film screenings or poetry nights, etc. All of that, the live music, everything just enlivens and emboldens our community.
I want to add to that too, Tanya. If you think of any place that you like to go that's not your hometown, you always go to places that have a lot of arts and culture happening. So people tend to gravitate to places. So it's not only a thing that helps the health of the city, it also grows the city.
Absolutely.
Nice. Well, Tanya and Carl, thank you so much for sharing community art with us.
Thank you so much for having
us.
The Mayor's Arts Awards are Friday, September 19th at 7 o'clock at Muncie Civic Theater. Pop of Culture co-host Michelle Kinsey is a MuncieArts board member. Also, Ball State Public Media is a media sponsor for the Mayor's Arts Awards. I'm Stephanie Weekman.
I'm Kara DuQuette.
And I'm Jen Blackmer. Continuing with our ongoing series of beautiful things, we are featuring a micro essay today by the author Robert Earl Barham. And Beautiful Things is a weekly online magazine filled with nonfiction micro essays. Today's essay is a meditation on teaching and the relationship between teachers and students. Welcome to our show, Robert.
Thank you so much, Jen. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're so happy you could take some time and share your piece with us. And the piece is entitled, For My Students.
From Alabama, Tennessee, and Michigan, China, Austria, and Indonesia, they see the world's grandeur and glory, menace and ruin. They are Nabokovs, Morrisons, O'Connors, Didions. They want answers, want to know what matters, would rather be somewhere else. They wear masks, stare at me in silence, say everything tastes different after COVID, especially oranges. They lose friends, grandparents, parents. They break down, break open. They come to class, say they didn't want to fall behind, didn't know what else to do. They say Juliet was maligned. The Iliad feels real, feels like Afghanistan. The writer took tragedy and made it beautiful. This is what grief is like. They ask me how I met my wife, what it's like to have kids. They stay after class and ask, is this true? Is this how the world is? They ask, can I talk to you? How am I doing? What's the point? Why am I here? They say they want to belong somewhere, don't know who they're supposed to be, feel like two opposing magnets, like their blood and brains are at odds. When class ends, they say, I wish I had talked more, wish you had talked more. This stuff is the bee's knees, ant's pants, cat's pajamas. Would rather have watched paint dry. Didn't like it, but know you tried. Appreciate that you listened. They say thanks.
Thank you so much for sharing that piece with us, Robert. And anyone who has spent any time in a classroom, either as a teacher or a student, I think understands this moment. And I, in particular, understand it profoundly and viscerally. And just the specifics with which you set up the contradictions of what it means to be both a teacher and a learner in this space is so powerful.
Thanks. That's a great encouragement. Yeah, it's humbling and mysterious, I think, to try to teach and stand in front of these kids, and we're all looking at you earnestly, and they're candid. Yeah, it's pretty magical and terrifying.
Magical and terrifying, and I love that. And again, I love the thing I seek in my own work are those contradictions that we embody all the time, right? And this idea of they want to know, yes, what you have to teach, but they also want to know you. Right. And there's such a strange, I think, tension in that. Right. Because our subject is supposed to be isolated from us. Yeah. It's supposed to be isolated from the person who shares the knowledge, but it never really is.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I think I often want to deflect toward the material, but they'll say, they'll ask questions and I'm like, well, I guess I should answer. So it's way more. I guess the teacher is as legible as the material is sometimes, and they're looking for answers. They really are. It's something else,
right? And I think that the times I remember in the classroom, which your piece made me reflect upon, are those moments where your passion for the material is really what kind of drives the interaction, right? And I love that. So obviously, I mean, we've what in the world that you've created here in this piece that is a reflection of your classroom is certainly clear and lovely and specific. So what inspired you to write this?
Oh, sure. I think so. The piece began with a conversation with a student. Yeah, so a student from Tupelo, Mississippi. We walked to the Great Hall where we have the dining hall, and we were just standing in line. And yeah, he was just musing, talking about graduation, and he made the remark, well, I think we were talking about the strange consequences of COVID. And
Right.
he said, like, everything tastes different after COVID, especially oranges. And I was like, that is an amazing line.
Yeah,
That's such an exquisite
absolutely.
expression. Yeah. And so he said it, and I was like, oh my gosh, Nathan, can I write that down? And then I think with that line, I thought, that's like shorthand for all the interesting things that students say. And often they don't have a filter. They're so candid in a
Right.
way that I feel like, in middle age, like tired and grumpy, with, taking care of three kids. But like these are fresh faced kids, like earnest and honest and like reckoning with things. And so you have a ringside seat to their lives, and they're struggling with hard things and engaging with ideas for the first time. So it's really animating. But he said that, and it was like retroactive, igniting all the memories that I had about students who say the things that they've said. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. And
yeah,
I think they're just so profound, not even realizing that they're being profound, which are I
yeah,
think, in
yeah,
those
totally.
moments kind of stand out. And you're like, wow. And
Yeah, yeah,
within that, sometimes I just have to remind them that their voice matters, right? So you can
mm,
trust these observations that you have about the world.
yeah,
And I also love the line, they break down, they break open, right?
yeah,
Because that's both difficult and hopeful at the same
mm,
time, right?
yeah, yeah. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, they're living away from home for the first time. A lot of them are losing loved ones for the first time. So there's a kind of vulnerability coupled with articulacy, because they're diving into ideas and they're giving like language to things that they're experiencing. So
Yeah.
it's just right for their like, so I teach a number of classes, including writing classes, and their open-heartedness that shows up on the page is really just exquisite and moving, and yeah, humbling to have a ringside seat to these kids, and they're making sense of the world.
It really is. And I'm assuming in your writing classes, you have them share work with each other. Is that
Yeah, that's
yeah?
right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And I do that as well in my playwriting classes, and they're so surprised when I, as an instructor, am moved by what they have
Mhm.
done. Because
Mhm.
there's this sense of, well, wait, you're the teacher, right? You've got all this figured out, and I'm just somebody who's kind of, stabbing in the dark with this.
Yeah.
And the fact that they can write something much like what you were talking about with your student and the line about COVID, the fact that they can write something that moves you, the
Yeah.
experienced
Yeah.
older voice in the room, is
Right.
so surprising to them.
Yeah, yeah, that's it. Yeah, yeah, and giving them permission,
Right. Yeah.
authorization to explore these ideas, and to affirm and say, like, yeah, nobody has seen the things that you have seen in the way that you have seen them, and I think yes, you need to testify all that's kind of fallen in your direction,
Yeah.
and so I think they take that and run with it.
I hopefully,
Yeah,
yeah. And my
yeah,
guess
yeah.
is based on the observations in this piece that we just heard, that your students are incredibly lucky to have
Oh,
you.
that's encouraging. That's kind of you to say. Yeah, it's aspirational. I mean, I want to be as attentive and as open-hearted as they often are. So,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah.
Robert, thank you so much for joining us here on Pop of Culture and sharing your piece called For My Students. Robert Earl Barham is an English professor at Covenant College in Lookout Mountain, Georgia, and he lives with his family in Chattanooga, Tennessee. This story comes from IPR's collaboration with River Teeth's Beautiful Things, a weekly magazine of micro essays. More at riverteethjournal.com. It's Pop of Culture. I'm Jen Blackmer.
And I'm Kara DuQuette. Today we're talking with local artist River Feeney, and we're asking him, what are you working on? And I want to thank you for being with us.
I am so happy to be here. Flattered and also terrified, but like just a little bit. Yeah.
Don't be too terrified at all.
I feel more comforted than I did when I first walked in here. I'll say that,
Good.
Honestly.
When did you first realize you wanted to be an artist?
Before we started doing the recording, I was saying to Luke, I wouldn't necessarily call myself an artist. I'm a hobbyist more than anything, I feel like. And I immediately was like, well, but I've been drawing and making art for a very long time in various forms. I've been a musician pretty much my whole life. I am an aspiring writer now in terms of physical art, probably like mid high school, which feels like so long ago now. It was a task that I got from a mental health provider that I was seeing to try and express myself in ways that like were less able to be like lied to, I guess, because I've always been kind of really good at like skirting around big feelings. Mm-hmm. It was one of those things where he was like, if you are honest with the paper, you can be honest with yourself, right? And I was such a perfectionist. This is true in my anyone that knows me in my day-to-day life will know that this is still true, and I shouldn't say was, but it became a thing of I started doing a lot of like ink drawing, specifically like in pen, so that any mistakes that I had to incorporate into the final project to like work on being okay with making mistakes. So it's been a wonderful 6 years of like taking it seriously, you know. I took like an intro to 2D art class in high school, which was like a requirement. We had to, so it was. I wouldn't count that exactly because they dragged me through it kicking and screaming. But I think that's probably where I first figured out like an enjoyment of specifically like black and white work, mm-hmm. And like contrast and values and that kind of thing.
I think it's perfectly defined to say we're a perfectionist on your way to manifesting that. That's a really interesting technique. Like, I can't avoid it. I'm going to use ink.
Yeah. And
I want to know, I'm interested in the therapy art aspect. What did you start with? Was it drawing images or writing words or? I've
always been kind of like a wordsmith a little bit like that. Silly, goofy, like only child. That's it.
Same.
Was almost about to say a swear word. I don't know if I'm allowed to do that. Only child stuff. Very much like I had all of my friends when I was a kid were books. So I got really like into expressing myself verbally, but it also, because I was pretty adept at it, could like skirt around the things that I really needed to be talking about. Because I used words as like a coping mechanism a little bit. And so it was more of a thing of, well, this is something you're not as good at. It's something that you haven't practiced until it can serve you. So why don't we try this as a new medium for expression, for self-expression, for getting things out there. And I'm so mad. It worked. It did what it was supposed to do. And I was mortified. I was like, dang it. I can't get out of talking about how I feel anymore. Because even if I was lying, the things that I was creating weren't.
Okay. So you said you kind of made you mad that it worked and kind of laid you bare. So what can you describe a piece for us or walk us through something that you put out there in the world?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm actively flipping through my sketchbook, which is not particularly helpful. I've always been.
I was gonna say great, and then you're like,
I thought it might be, but it isn't. I don't know. I've been one of my big themes, like in probably December, which is when I've got like dated it and everything. Oh. When I was really into this video game. This is a lot of the stuff that I make is based on other forms of media that I've enjoyed because there's such a thing. I've got such a thing about storytelling, and how storytelling like is done through various media. That's like my big nerd out thing, is I could talk about storytelling for days. There's this game called Mouthwashing that got really kind of weirdly popular for an indie game that had a lot of like really dark themes in it. It was essentially like a story about 5 people who are kind of like stranded on a cargo ship in space, like in a not too distant future, kind of like vaguely dystopian. But a lot of the imagery was intentionally very disturbing because the protagonist was an unreliable narrator and like he himself was kind of going crazy. And so a lot of the imagery in there is like it's like 3D animated, but in a way that still feels a little bit two-dimensional. But it was a lot of like, there are like heavy themes. And so these characters were kind of like a vessel for discussion of these like really hard topics. And there was something about that really resonated with me. And I started like studying people so that I could like draw them, because that was what I was thinking about most often at the time.
Oh, it's amazing. There's so many different ways to connect. And one thing I didn't ask you, the things I've seen that you've done have been in black and white. Mm-hmm. Do you utilize color at all?
I do. I'm not very good at it. And that's really the crux of it, is color scares me. It's one of those things that's like, I know there's like color theory. I think that sounds like something someone has said to me before. That's I don't know. I have done, but it's enough. Like there's lighting is really interesting to me, because is in terms of color, because lighting fully changes the composition of your piece, in terms of like color choices. And again, I use mostly pens, and I only have the like 15 colors available to me, and so I feel like I can't make those like very cool moving heavy contrast pieces with like cool lighting that I love to like look at so much with like the handful of colors that I have. And that maybe is like a skill issue on my part, but
sometimes it's liberating to have some limitation like that when you're creating.
It's definitely something I've dabbled with. It's just not like, it's not something that I feel super comfortable doing regularly, if that makes sense. I'm not there yet. I'm still a baby. I'm just a little guy.
Well, where can we see your work, or can we? As a baby artist.
As a baby artist. I don't know. Ask nicely.
That's what I did.
Yeah, I really, that's it. It's like, I usually have a sketchbook out like while I'm working. I usually carry it with me. I have a couple of regulars who are curators who are like, when am I going to get? You're not. I'm never selling my work. It's not going to happen. So
well, you certainly don't have to sell your art. That's not a requirement.
But it's one of those things that like, I don't know, I create because I love it. And sometimes for other people, but because I love those people. And all my big stuff is at Hall & Oates. Come see me at work and we'll talk about it. Or maybe we won't. It'll be great. It'll be good either way. We'll have a good time. Can you tell that this particular question made me more nervous?
I could. But River, you gave a great answer. Well, we've been speaking with River Feeney. We've been speaking with River Feeney, local artist.
It's time for our weekly roundup of all things arts and culture here in East Central Indiana, Kara, and there is so much going on.
Yay, let's do it.
Let's do it. The Old Washington Street Festival is Saturday and Sunday, September 13th and 14th. This annual extravaganza lets you marvel at Victorian homes, stroll past handcrafted artisan booths, and tap your toes to some live music. The event is family-friendly and open to the public. Information online is on Facebook under Old Washington Street Festival. It's going to be a beautiful Saturday for an all-day music fest. So, Locked Groove Records in the Village in Muncie is hosting one. From noon to 10 p.m., Saturday the 13th, stop by and see 13 local music acts perform. No tickets required. Locked Groove Records is that big green house in the village at 519 North Martin Street, and you can't get there even though it's construction. You can find them on Instagram at Locked Groove Records.
It's going to be a beautiful day of music in the summertime.
Oh, yeah.
At Mound State Park on Saturday, September 13th from 4:30 to 5:30 p.m., enjoy the healing power of nature. A concert by Larry Gindhart and Joel Delaschmidt. An unforgettable and gentle yet powerful music experience in the beauty of Mound State Park.
2 events for our little listeners at Minnetrista this weekend. On Friday, September 12th, Minnetrista will hold evening hours for their back-to-school social from 5 to 8 p.m. Come for live music, themed activities, and the chance to make some new friends. Saturday evening is the family night hike, starting at 6 p.m. Bring your adventure with a visit to the Goodnight Forest exhibition. We covered that here on Pop of Culture a few weeks ago. You'll explore whimsical, nature-inspired scenes there. Then set out on a guided night hike through our Minnetrista's nature area, discovering the sights and sounds of Indiana's native habitats as twilight falls and the stars begin to shine. Registration for both events is at minnetrista.net/events.
I have never experienced Minnetrista at night.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Gorgeous.
It's the last weekend to see Rumors by Neil Simon at the Anderson Main Stage Theater. At a large, tastefully appointed townhouse, the deputy mayor of New York has just shot himself. It's only a flesh wound, but Charlie Brock's self-inflicted injury sets off a series of events before guests arrive for a party, causing 4 couples to experience farcical hilarity in this classic play from 1988. Friday and Saturday shows are at 7:30 p.m., and Sunday, the matinee on September 14th, is at 3:30 p.m. Tickets and information can be found at mainstagetheater.org. If you have a seasonal event you'd like to share with us, go to indianapublicradio.org/contact and then click Pop of Culture.
Support for Pop of Culture comes from you. You've probably heard that Congress has defunded public media. For Ball State Public Media, that's 40% of our funding, about $1.4 million. So if you value this program, created by and focused on folks in your community, then now's the time to step up. This show will not exist without you. Become a monthly donor now at indianapublicradio.org.
And that's our show. Our fact checker and ethics curator is Stephanie Weekman. This week was produced by Luke Jones, whose farcical hilarity is legendary. Our show was hosted by me, Kara DuQuette.
And me, Jen Blackmer. I agree with you, Kara. Pop of Culture is a production from IPR on the campus of Ball State University. This week on Pop of Culture, we're back to school. Grab your knapsack and join us.
What the hell year is it? Knapsack?
I thought it was fun.
What the hell year is it?